Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. In this video, I'm going to open this envelope, which I know what it carries, and I'm really excited to be doing this with you. So, you know that I'm living in France since September of 2023, and of course, learning the language of the country where I live was one of the important things for me to do. And I started 1 year before I moved here to learn. And it's been like a year and 9 months now that I'm learning French. And in May, I had this exam of the B2 level. And here we go. I know the result because they emailed it to me before they sent me the diploma. But honestly, I'm very happy to share the result with all of you. So, I'm a student of Sorbonne Paris Nord and at Espace Langue, which is the department where we have all the exams and such. I did the exams of the B2 level, and here we go. I got the B2 level of my French language with 80 points out of 100. So I got 18 points in writing production, 22 points in writing comprehension, 21 points in oral production and 19 points in oral comprehension, resulting in 80 points out of 100. This is a big deal for me, honestly, because I started doing this, I started learning French just a few months ago. And getting the diploma of the B2 level, it's honestly a huge deal for me. And it wasn't always easy, of course. There were a lot of challenges that I had to go during the way. And of course, it was totally worth it because here I am today possessing a diploma of B2. But that's not only it, you know, because just a diploma doesn't prove anything unless you are actually able to speak the language and interact with people. Why did I have to take the DELF exam? Was because of my master, because I am doing the master in a French university. Of course, I have to be speaking French, and I was speaking French, but now, you know, I can also prove that I speak French. And not only that, but for me, the most important thing was to actually learn the language and be able to make connections in French in France. Because I believe that if you are living in a country, you should learn the language of the country where you are, and you should speak in that language, because if you are benefiting from all the other aspects of the country, then you need to make the efforts and speak in that language. I started in September 2022 to learn French. So I started with an Albanian teacher. She's called Sema, and I had so many lessons with her. And we advanced really fast because at the beginning I was doing 5 lessons a week. So it was a lot, but it was worth it because it gave me a very strong foundation of the language. So like 5 lessons a week, every day having a lesson, having to prepare for the lesson and doing all the work was one of the hardest things to do in order to learn French, because just imagine you have to do a lesson every day. You have to prepare for that lesson every day. Spoiler alert, I did not prepare for all the lessons because simply there was not enough time. But I was showing up 5 times a week in my lessons. And this gave me a strong foundation. Also, something that really helped me was that Sema is a very good knower of both grammars, Albanian and French. So this helped me so much to grasp the difference between, you know, like Albanian grammar and French grammar. Even though most of the times I was being like, I don't really need grammar because as a nature, I don't like grammar, I don't like rules, I like to speak, I like to try, I like to learn vocabulary, and this is my part. And Sema was insistent in learning the grammar because you can't learn the language without the grammar, so now I know that. The thing is that it gave me so good foundations, so now I can understand why we say it. For example, there are a lot of things, for example, like in order to say like, I like this, in French and in Albanian, it's kind of the same thing. We don't say I like this, but we say like, that thing is likable, ça me plaît. So like, that me likes, literally, if we translate it. And it's exactly the same structure in Albanian. Kjo më pëlqen. These things, you know, like making the connections between the two languages helped me so much. And this is going to help you if you try the same thing in order, like, how can I mix the one language I know with the language that I'm learning to connect the dots and to make the patterns, because there are many patterns in any language that you are speaking, and in any language that you are learning, you will notice how many patterns you will be able to find. And a very key important process during the language learning is to actually identify those patterns and make sure that you learn them appropriately, so you can actually simplify the learning process. Because learning a language should be all about having fun and enjoying the process, and if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Hand in hand with those lessons, I had a few, but a very few lessons, like I think 5 or 7 lessons with a teacher I found on Italki. He's French, so that helped as well, because of course, you know, like learning with someone that speaks your same language and is from the same country as you are is good, because they can really make the connections and patterns and such. But at the same time, it's not a native speaker. So the composition of the two, but even though like with a French native teacher, I only had like 5 or 10 lessons, I'm not even sure. Now, something else that helped before I came here was that in Tirana there were Francophone rendezvous every Tuesday. So I would go there and, you know, like it would be very difficult to understand. Sometimes I would switch to English and then I would be feeling bad about it. But I kept showing up there on Tuesdays every time I could, because it was like practice with natives and I could get the first-hand experience with them. And I learned so much during those meetings as well, because, you know, it would be just French people meeting to have fun, to grab a beer and such, but like I would learn a lot. So if you are in Tirana or wherever in the world you are, there must be something, you know, like this, where French people meet to speak and practice French. And if you can find something like that, no matter what language you're learning, just go for it, you know, like be as much surrounded as you can be. But then in September 2023, I moved here in Paris. So this completely changed the approach, because from one teacher, I was surrounded by teachers. Like not everyone is a teacher, but they ask you for something. One day I was going to the market and someone asked me if I had a lighter, and he was like, "T'as du feu?" And feu means fire here, so I was like, you're asking me for fire, so I assume it's the lighter. And I said, no, I don't smoke. But, you know, like this kind of thing that says, you know, like someone asking you, do you have this? And you just learned a new word. Like I learned how do you say lighter. I didn't know that, you know, like French people will randomly be asking you, do you have some fire? I need to lit up my cigarette, you know, like this kind of thing. So moving here, of course, helped me enormously, and I wouldn't be in this level if I was living still in Tirana. Of course, being here made the whole difference. But it was not always like this. When I first moved here, I had, you know, like moving from Albania to Paris was hard. It was not easy, and on the first few months, I was not focusing as much as I should have on learning the language. And till December, one of my first sentences I would say to everyone was, "Parlez-vous anglais?" Do you speak English? Because I chose to speak English with most of the people, and honestly, that was not the best choice, because it stopped me. So from September till December, I was learning so little, like doing the bare minimum. But then in December, for personal reasons, I had to go to Albania for a family emergency, and when I was coming back to Paris, there was this guy on airplane who actually was Albanian, but he did not think I was Albanian, so he asked me in French, like, is the seat next to you, next free? And I'm like, yes, you can sit here. And he asked me something else, and I was like, can you repeat that? And then he realized that I'm not French, and then he switched to Albanian, and then we spoke Albanian. But from that, I was realizing, so like I've been here for 3 months now, from September to December, and I'm still not able to speak French. And it literally hurt me. I was like, I really need to change this. And from the moment I returned, you know, I was making the most to speak French with everyone I could. And I remember my French friend, we were meeting at the university, and you know, like when I returned, we spoke, you know, it was painful for her, I'm sure, but we spoke French the whole time. And I was sure I was making a lot of mistakes, and I said to her and to the other friends, like, please have patience with me, because I really need to start speaking French, otherwise I'm not going to ever learn. And guess what happened? I was making a lot of mistakes, but I never stopped speaking French. And of course, I switched to English a lot of times, especially if I'm with friends that I know that they speak English, because I have the mental blockage. My brain will literally say to me, but Arsene, they speak English, why are we speaking French with them? You know, and I'm like, but no, we need to speak French. And it's always like this, but I try the most with people that I don't know, for example, and they try speaking English. And like, stop, can we please speak French? Because if I keep speaking English with everyone, I'll never learn French. And I know French, so we can actually speak French. So this would be something that you would need to try to do, like speak the language that you are trying to learn as much as you can actually speak. Now, the thing is that when you are speaking a language that you are not native, people will realize that you are not native and will immediately switch to English, right? I am sure that this has happened to you so many times. Now, I'm going to tell you a short story, what happened to me one day when I was in a coffee shop here in Paris, near Châtelet. So I sat down and the waiter comes, and I say to him, je voudrais un chocolat chaud. So I know the accent was bad, I know, you know, everything like that, but I asked him, I want a hot chocolate. And he replied to me, yes, of course, in English. And then I say, thank you, in French. And I ask him in French, can I also have a glass of water? And he says to me, yes, of course, in English. And I ask him, can I also have the Wi-Fi password? In French. And then he gives me the password in English. And I say to him, thank you, that's very nice. And he replies to me in English. I kept speaking French and he kept speaking English. And I was not stopping. I was like, I know you're French. I know you don't want to speak French because, you know, like, I don't know what your reason is, but basically you're not happy with my French, but I'm going to go with my French. Because if I don't speak English, are you going to speak Albanian to me? Like, that's the clear logic that I follow. And by the end, you know, like the very last thing, he was like, thank you, in French. So even though he was insisting in speaking English, I was insisting in speaking French. And by the end, he was speaking French with me too. And there are many stories like this at the airport, at coffee shops, at the bakery, you know, like when I try to speak French and they reply to me in English. But what I do is that I reply to them in French one more time, second time, third time, fourth time, and then they will kind of realize that, hey, I want to speak French, can we please do this, you know? So everywhere you are, try to speak French or try to speak the language that you are learning. If you're learning English, try to speak English. If you are learning Albanian and you are in Albania, try to speak Albanian with everyone you can. Because first off, it's not hard, second off, it's fun, and third off, it's rewarding. Of course that saying I will learn helps, but doing the work is the thing that matters. And doing the work, it's not always fun and it's not always easy. It should be fun. Easy, it can be, but it's not a condition. Now, I have here my notebook that I write things that I learn in French, and of course there are a lot of things that I don't write because, you know, like, we can't literally write everything. But what I try to do at the moment, so like some of the notes are from my lessons that I had at the university. Yeah, also something I forgot to mention, at Espace Long at the university, they were offering free courses for us, so this helped enormously. Like a clear course with a good teacher, with a good, you know, like lesson plan, what are we going to learn, when, how, and everything like that helps enormously in your learning journey. So a lot of notes are from those courses, but even without courses, you can do it, especially when it is, like for vocabulary building. Very close to where I live, I have a very cute little bar, and I go there so often. And some days what I do, it's not on habit, unfortunately, because it's expensive. But some days what I do is I go there and get the newspaper. I choose a random article and I try to take a different topic every day, like one day sport, one day economy, one day nature, so like I get different vocabulary. And I start reading, and of course reading a newspaper in a foreign language is not easy. And there are a lot of words that I don't know. So I underline the words, and I write the words, and I find the translation, and I try to make a sentence with a translation, with a new word that I learned. And you can do this for any language that you are trying to learn. Sometimes I just ask my friend, who is a huge help for me in my language learning journey. And some days I just ask ChatGPT, and then I ask her to confirm, just to make sure that, like ChatGPT is not saying, yes, it's true, because it can happen like that. Another thing that really helps about the verb conjugation as well is this book, B2 La Conjugation, and it has all the conjugation for the verbs. So it is like this, and it helps to create mental patterns where you only think of a verb and like you kind of know, because you see all the differences and they highlight everything on how, like where it is different with a different color and such. And this is a huge help as well. But for me, French verbs remain one of the parts where it's the hardest thing, because I don't know what it is, but for me, like, I cannot do conjugation. I do a lot of mistakes every time I'm trying to conjugate. I'm sure French people would disagree, but like to me at least, it seems like I'm doing a mistake every time I'm conjugating a verb, because it's like conjugation, it doesn't come as easy. But here is the good news. Even if you say like the wrong conjugation, even if you use the second person when you need to use the third person, people will understand what you are trying to say, people will know what you are saying, and that's what it counts. Because you don't need to be perfect in a language that you are not native. My question to all my students who are learning Albanian with me is, are you making mistakes in your language, in your native language? And they're like, no. And they're like, really? You never made a mistake in your native language? Like wrong grammar or a word that you used wrong, that it doesn't really mean that, but you used to mean that? And they're like, actually, yes. So if you can be perfect in your native language, you can never expect to be perfect or 100% perfect in the language that you're learning. So even though I do, like a wrong conjugation of the verb sometimes, that doesn't stop, because people will understand what I'm saying and my point will be shared across. So that's what matters by the end of the day. People ask me all the time, but Arsene, how did you learn this much in such a short period? Learning in such a short period, of course, it was challenging, but in French, they say this thing, si on veut, on peut. If we want, we can. And it's the same thing that we say in English, if there is a will, there is a way. So the thing is that if we set ourselves, if we set a goal that we are going to do this, we are going to do it, and the thing is going to be possible. So at the moment, I'm reading this book from Marie Forleo, Everything is Figure Outable, and it is just amazing. I'm going to make another video about her book when I finish reading it. It's just amazing because honestly, like, she says, don't say I can't, say I won't, because if you want, you can. And there are millions of pieces of proof that actually support this idea, unless, like it's a bigger force than human being. If it's a bigger force, then you can't. But if it's just a human being and a human, like obstacle, it can be surpassed. So I wanted to finish the video with this. If you are learning a language, French, Albanian, English, Italian, Croatian, whatever the language is, You can do it. It's hard. It takes time. It takes money. It takes mental energy. But the rewards are uncountable. Like, you are going to make so many new friends. You are going to have so many beautiful conversations with people in the train, in the post office, at the bakery, everywhere. And it's going to be so much rewarding because, hey, you are finally speaking the language of the country where you are living at. And by the end of the day, you are being respectful to the country and to the people of the country who you are living and from which you are benefiting in any way. So my tip for everyone would be, if you are living in a country, learn to speak the language of that country, because it's the least that you can do for that country and for those people. And if you are thinking about doing the DELF B2 exam, you can totally pass it and you can totally get a very good score. If I could do it in such a short time, you can do it too. So keep learning and keep having fun while you learn.